Perfect. All right, everybody. Welcome to our Work Smarter, Grow Faster with Modern ERP webinar. Thank you again. I know I said it a million times, but thank you again for making the time to join us today. We do have a pretty large turnout, so all lines have been placed on mute for today's event. And we do have just a couple housekeeping items that we would like to go over with you guys. First off, should you lose your visual connectivity and be unable to see the presentation, please feel free to join by phone via dialing this number right here and using the webinar ID presented in the green box. Also, we are going to be recording this session today, so we plan on sending everybody a copy of the recording in about 48 hours, so definitely stay tuned and expect that in your inbox. And finally, we really want, even though lines are muted, we really do want this session to be as interactive as possible. So we are accepting all of your questions in the chat box below. I did provide a little bit of a screenshot here. You can see where to find it, but definitely feel free to just chat any questions you have and we'll definitely get to them at the end of the session. Without further ado, I will pass it to our Vice President at MIBAR, Jory Weissman. Please take us away.
Thank you so much, Maria, and thanks everybody for joining us today. Very excited about our presentation and our special guest, Brian Matthews, who is the COO of the Fanatic Group. I think you'll find Brian's experience quite relevant as you think about your journey to modern ERP and cloud migration. So we'll hear some of his insights and we'll talk about their process that they went through as they made their transition from a legacy solution. So we're going to talk about their focus, of course, on their process, but we're going to really be drilling down into aspects of digital transformation that transcends that of the Fanatic Group's journey. We'll be thinking and talking about the ROI of legacy replacement, and most importantly, having a future-proof investment, something that's always current, always up to date, and really alleviating a lot of the headaches that's often associated to legacy-style ERP solutions. Other topics we'll be focused on is marketplace integration, both with e-commerce and EDI. I know that's a tremendous topic in today's day and age, certainly as businesses look to expand and grow. Dealing with e-commerce and working with mass merchandisers in a seamless way is very, very important. We also want to have the discussion about increased agility and productivity that Brian was able to realize by his use of cloud-based ERP solutions, and overall focusing on reducing the capital expenditures that are often associated to on-prem systems and, of course, lowering the total cost of ownership. So one slide I always like to bring up, which I think is really so relevant in today's day and age, is that brought to us by Satya Nadella, who is really under his leadership has helped Microsoft become a significant growth story once again. And basically he did that by migrating the entire organization to the cloud and all of their products and services and their offerings moving to the cloud. And he suggests that organizations really need to think about themselves in a different way. Think of themselves as software companies as opposed to just buying a piece of software, but really thinking about how you can leverage software to a strategic business advantage, which I think is certainly a perfect segue to our guest, Brian Matthews. Brian, welcome. Thank you for being here today. Appreciate that.
Oh, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I think, no stranger to digital transformation. Brian has spent 25 years in the tech space, helping organizations of all different types and styles implement improved business processes. Obviously, today doing it with the cloud, not so much 25 years ago, but I think you going through some of those trials and tribulations has positioned us well to have this conversation today. Brian, as we noted, is the COO and led the NetSuite implementation for the Fanatic Group, which is really a multifaceted style business. They are an import distribution organization, which many of you in attendance might know has its own eccentricities and issues. They are in the custom manufacturing business, and they're dealing with licensing of sports products and sports merchandise. So, Brian, maybe you can tell us a little bit about the Fanatic Group and some of the scope of business processes that they deal with.
Sure. I mean, our parent group is a large printer on the East Coast. They deal obviously with a lot of paper and things like that. Our particular business is a sub of them. Is like you said, we we bring in product from overseas, we bring that product in blank, and then we mark that product based off of licensing and royalties and things from other businesses that want, you know, just different looks or different things done, which kind of presents its own issues.
Sure.
So, I mean, when I got there, obviously, as a paper group, there was a lot of paper. I don't like paper. So the transformation was going to be interesting for me.
Understood. And they're in the licensing business of sports merchandise. So they're dealing with some pretty prominent institutions as well.
Definitely. We license things with pretty much every major or every college in the United States and Canada. We sell product to professional teams, just other entities that have their own business models or things, and they want to mark product a certain way. We do that for them as well.
So you've got really a lot of different irons in the fire, in that you're dealing with traditional distribution, importing product, and obviously the lead times and things associated to that process. Custom manufacturing, which presents its own set of unique challenges. And we're going to take a look as we dive into some of the specifics of what Brian has engineered there, and using a platform like NetSuite. And I think you'll see some pretty creative ways we've adopted the software. Of course, and Brian was a driving force behind the integration with NetSuite and various trading partners that they do business with. So you're dealing with some mass merchandisers, as well as developing an e-com business for them, correct?
That is correct. And then we have it also on our own side where we sell product on Amazon as well. So we've integrated Amazon via FAR into NetSuite, so that all the orders come in seamlessly. We do our thing, and then we push those orders back out through FAR back to Amazon, write all the data in the appropriate fields so that everybody sees their product got shipped when it got shipped, what's the packing, et cetera.
Etc. We're going to dive into that, and I think that's a good primer for some of the stuff we're going to be focused on as we move through the process. But what I always think is important to think about what a lot of the market drivers. So we're talking about a specific use case for Brian and the Fanatic Group. I'm sure each of you in attendance today may have your own tale of woe, as it is, in terms of why we're thinking about this type of transformation. But when we look at the market drivers, aging infrastructure and the endless upgrade cycle that permeates that landscape is a challenge. Very often today we're talking about making significant investments to keep the infrastructure where it needs to be, making sure that there's a synchronicity between the hardware platforms, the operating systems, the database, the software applications. It's a challenge. And then, of course, as you sprinkle in various third-party solutions or customizations, makes the upgrade process very, very costly. And generally, not a lot of result. I mean, for the most part, you want to secure business continuity, but unlike cloud solutions of today, the legacy systems are not making radical advances from version to version. So that is a key market driver. Also, user productivity. We're going to spend some time talking to Brian about tangible examples he had implemented there to help transform task workers to become knowledge workers. And I think that's the biggest transition as we think about alleviating the overheads associated to redundant data entry, do more things through automation, and then really being able to empower users today with software that is very much keeping with what they might experience at home or banking systems or any other applications that they come in contact with every day. And all of this obviously relates to business risk and making sure that we're staying on top of the issues that confront every business today, whether it's cybersecurity or data integrity, the fact that we have more personalized information, whether it's credit card compliance or other things that people are storing in spreadsheets and various other areas. All of this presents a significant level of risk that is absolutely mitigated by moving to cloud-based solutions. We'll show you some examples of that. And of course, organizations' data has expanded. Brian's going to share with us some information about the database size for the various graphical images that they're storing. And what kind of a nightmare that presented for them and how he's addressed that. and overall that solution being more pigeonholed, really limiting your potential, right? How do we find pockets of growth, right? What people are looking for today is how do we extend the business? How do we get more transactions through our organization? How do we streamline those transactions, and how do we grow the business? And these are all drivers behind the digital transformation initiative. But we're not alone in thinking about this. And what MIBAR does is we sponsor a group called the Business Software Education Center. And they surveyed organizations like you in attendance today. Actually, we surveyed over 1,000 businesses throughout the US, predominantly focused on small and mid-market organizations. And what you'll notice here that I highlighted cloud adoption and migration as being 29% respondents indicating that they have an initiative in that area. But if you think about things like cybersecurity, digital transformation, analytics and dashboard, these are really all part of the same philosophy. So what we did is we drilled down and we said, hey, let's look at this in a different perspective. In general, how many of you plan to implement digital transformation initiative? And nearly 2/3 are suggesting that they have a plan in place or will continue their investment. I'm curious what the other 33% are really thinking about, but suffice it to say, a significant number of your peers are moving forward with this type of initiative. So we talked earlier about this journey and what the Fanatic Group's journey was. And Brian, I got to confess, I've often cited this in many sales presentations I've done because it's such an unusual story. And we kind of took a circuitous route. And actually, some of this even predates Brian joining the firm. I suppose that's probably why they brought him on board. But in what we're calling BC, which is not what you think, that's really before cloud, they were running an industry-specific legacy ERP solution. I think I heard you, Brian, say about creating paper. I think it was designed around the paper industry. Is that right, Brian?
The oldest legacy system was definitely designed around paper, but that's their core, and obviously they have sub companies below that. But I've never seen as much paper as I saw there. And then obviously in our side of the business, right? Exactly. And
because it was somewhat weak in the fundamentals of the accounting, as many in attendance today they were also using QuickBooks sitting alongside of that, and they knew as the business scaled, and then they threw off this subsidiary, the Fanatic Group. They realized, hey, we've got to make a change. And problems with legacy systems, while they might have been very specific to an industry, the issues there is that you have a very limited source of support, very limited source of supply, and typically the fear of loss and fear of business, continuity being impacted is what drives people to look. And that's what made the CEO reach out to MIBAR and say, hey, we'd like to work with you and help us to evaluate various system options. And as an ERP agnostic provider, I think we have a good perspective on the landscape. We have done legacy systems in our 30-year history, and we've migrated to the cloud many years ago. As we saw that trend emerging, we knew we had to be at the forefront. We presented options. We said, let's look at cloud versus on-prem. And, business owners in 2013 were a little bit more cloud adverse than they are today. It was fear of the unknown. Am I going to lose control? Am I going to lose my data? Are they going to shut me off? And, what if I don't have access to the systems? Of course, that's been somewhat, reduced as we become more familiar, more comfortable. And of course, as the cybersecurity threats have continued to emerge and plague our systems, we know that professional hosting organizations are going to be able to manage our infrastructure at a significantly lower cost, significantly better than we can. Unfortunately, after that discussion, they made the choice to go to Microsoft Dynamics GP. And in 2013, not a horrible decision, not a bad decision. It was a very popular, in fact, 35 or 40,000 businesses use this software. And it was probably the most popular distribution package that was out there. And it had a great vision that Microsoft had painted of all of these interconnected parts working together. And they moved on, and by all accounts, a relatively solid implementation. But in and around 2014, there was a little bit of trouble in paradise. I think the accounting team felt, heck, we were on QuickBooks. This is not nearly as easy as QuickBooks. And one thing that's great about QuickBooks, while it's not scalable and it can't do all of the things that modern business is going to need today from a distribution perspective and from production perspective, it certainly is easy to use. And I think that creates some consternation there. I know Brian walked into a bit of a hornet's nest in the accounting department when he joined. And they had, service started to age out, and they had some mismatched equipment in terms of, the younger generation looking to be with Apple and iOS platform devices, and the rest of the team sitting there on Windows devices, having some issues, just trying to keep the status quo there, which really would have cost a significant investment. And of course, remote access issues, as people started to work more from home, even pre-COVID, and businesses would travel and, need access to systems, that became more of a challenge. So what they went and they did, and they said in 2015, we got to change our state. And they brought in Brian, and I think you had a healthy agenda. They said, make it easy, Brian, maximize our efficiency, drive our growth, and make sure we're compliant. Easier off the tongue than it was in reality, I'd imagine.
It was something, but it's always a good challenge. And you guys did some great work for us in providing the analysis of the different options that were available to us. Even though I was obviously pushing the cloud aspect, you guys took the time to present everything to us. So I do appreciate that.
Well, yeah, one of the things you had us do, and to your credit, is rather than throwing the baby out with the bathwater, said, hey, do we expand or do we replace GP? Which is a common question I think a lot of people in the audience today would confront. They think, they go out and they shop for new ERP, and they say, well, maybe I'll expand and build on the devil I know, as opposed to venturing into this. And when we looked at these critical aspects, you said to me, we need e-commerce and EDI integration, which certainly we could have bolted on to Dynamics GP. In fact, many of the same partners that work with NetSuite work with Dynamics. You said you wanted barcode scanning and WMS, not just for pick, pack, ship, but also for tracking orders through the shop. I think you had a real solid vision there of improving customer service. We needed to develop a royalty system that was going to be better than the spreadsheets. And I think that took you guys hours to produce, and you wanted to make sure you had some approval workflow. We'll talk about some of that. The nature of your business is such that you don't want to print up 10,000 units of the wrong product. That I could tell you. I mean, nobody wants to do that, but I know that was a bit of an issue. But Brian enabled us to do a cost analysis, and when we thought about that and having to bring in CRM to improve customer service, and a separate analytic application to drive analysis, and then having all of the server infrastructures, I think, Brian, the choice was pretty obvious to us, at least, wasn't it?
I think it was more than obvious, especially the growth factor that they had been on and what we were expecting coming through. Again, based on all the paper and stuff that we were utilizing to manage things, there was no way that without severely high costs in overhead and everything else, that we were going to be able to, it would be a hindrance if we had not gone to a cloud-based system, no question.
Yeah. And well, I know we were convinced, and I think some of the management team there was also on board with it, but, getting ownership to reinvest in a secondary ERP implementation after having done it in late 2013, early 2014, and do it again just two short years later. That's a big ask, but we knew that it made sense. And I'll never forget this, New Year's Eve, December 31st at 9:45 p.m. Right, they signed the paperwork to on board with NetSuite, and it was an interesting New Year's night, but down to the wire.
Exactly. It may have taken some drinking to make that final step, but we got there, and it was. I don't think anybody looked back after that. It's definitely been the right choice.
Yeah, I think we termed it the grand experiment, and we had the luxury of a working platform in place, and didn't have the pressure of a sharp deadline. It allowed us to really approach it intelligently, and by working with the same team, we had the tribal knowledge of the business, and we knowing GP as well as we did, can certainly help in the conversion process. And you haven't looked back, as you pointed out, and here we sit in 2021, and you're looking to accelerate and continue the growth of the organization. Certainly more in the area of e-com has developed in terms of the marketplace integration. But underneath this, you also had a business relocation. And let's talk about that, because very often business growth and moving a business is common. We see that quite a bit. And moving with a cloud solution is a little bit different than moving with legacy, but I think you had some legacy appendages still out there. Could you tell us about that move and what some of the considerations were there?
The biggest consideration was, obviously we had to grow. We'd grown out of the facility that we were in. We ended up moving the manufacturing for our side of the business down to Florida, but we still had over 1 terabyte worth of art sitting on servers up in New Jersey. And so the big question became, how do I give guys access to that data and do it quickly? So we ended up having to set up a VPN, a secure VPN from both facilities. So basically, it was almost as if you were sitting still in New Jersey in the office next door. So that was probably one of the bigger aspects of it that we needed to find a solution to, which we did, because we ended up moving all of that data out of those servers, and we moved it onto the cloud. And so we integrated a second cloud. We used Dropbox Business to store that data. And now it's accessible to everybody. So even our salespeople, when they're out, they can access that same data. If they're talking to a customer and they want to verify the exact artwork that they want, they're able to pull that up, show the customer, and there's no questions on an order.
That's good, and we're gonna talk about how this is shared, not only through accessibility, through having a service provider like the Dropbox that's storing that and alleviating. Because one of the things that kept us up at night as an IT service provider is making sure that those servers were being backed up, and just backing up 1 terabyte of data to the cloud is expensive, and any on-premise and failover redundancy is an issue. Of course, moving the core of the business up on NetSuite was a non-issue. It's just a matter of where you plug your browser into and getting IP connectivity, and you're good to go. But so you had that legacy appendage that was there, and you've taken measures in the cloud to move off of that. So and I think that's a key component of as we think about transitioning to the cloud, and it is a real tangible example. And I think you've also integrated that application directly into NetSuite as well, correct?
It's tied into NetSuite as well. For example, when the guys use the machines to go mark a product, there's actually a file path that gets stored on each line item that says this particular. Dropbox appears as just another drive on their system, in how it's integrated. So they're very easily for them to just copy that path, go find that piece of artwork, and load that into the machine so we can begin marking product as quickly as possible.
And I think we have an example of that in one of the upcoming slides that we'll focus in on. And then you also obviously expanded the footprint in terms of the EDI trading partners, and we'll get into some of those details as well. So it was kind of a land and expand philosophy starting on New Year's Eve 2015, early part of 2016, really building out a model and going live with it, and then accelerating through the process and taking advantage of components of NetSuite as you matured. One of the things I was particularly focused on was how do we improve customer service? Everybody says they want to do it, and really trying to come up with some tangible examples. And I think about your artwork approval process, the killing of the paper, and making sure the right product gets to the right place at the right time. And what I did is I pulled up a couple of screens here. One is of a of a NetSuite customer maintenance record. And just want to point out to the audience that on this customer maintenance record, you can see there's various tabs, make it pretty easy to get to not just the traditional financial accounting information, but all of the communication information is readily stored. And that can take the shape of different messages that are synchronized between Outlook and the NetSuite application. And this could be associated to sales transactions or customer relationships. And you were kind enough to send me over a screenshot also. I just redacted out some of this. What can you share with us about this process, how it's improved, how you're using NetSuite? What's the use case here, what we're looking at it, which is an expanded view of the communications on a customer record?
Well, there's you can tie in Microsoft Outlook, which most of our people prefer as their email client, directly into NetSuite. And so what it allowed us to do is, instead of having data stored on somebody's Outlook that nobody else can see, we can push that directly into the customer record. So interaction, faxes, emails. What you're seeing here is a series of emails where we're going through an approval process. We've attached, artwork to the customer. So even our salespeople can now come online, see where we are in the process, what's happening, who's responded, who sent this. There's no question. They can also see what date and what time things were sent. And if we didn't get the artwork right the first time, we had to send it back a second or third time. They're able to see the whole process, but everything's done through NetSuite. So if somebody goes on vacation and someone else has to pick up the work, it's easy for them to see what happened, where it is, who they've been communicating with, and pick it up quickly so that we don't lose a beat.
And you bring up great points, and I really appreciate that insight. If we think about the NetSuite record itself, this can surround financial transactions as well. This same philosophy can apply to credit and collections management, overdue accounts receivable, dunning information. This can be tracked this way on invoices or individual transactions. So really a good example of how we can manage this process and know and get everybody on the same page. So happy to see that. But what you've also done is you've extended, right? So we're all about the artwork, and I know about the images and making sure the right thing gets printed on the product. Like I said before, we don't want to produce 10,000 units with the wrong logo of last year's image and not this year's image. You were kind enough to share with us an example of what your actual order entry screen looks like, which really just shows the graphical nature of the NetSuite interface here, where this thumbnail image, which has the art file path that you were talking about, which is stored up in that alternative cloud folder, and actually seeing the thumbnail here, I'm assuming that's helping customer service around their job, but also has a downstream benefit to the rest of the team as well.
Exactly. And this piece is not included. I wanted this piece, and we specifically asked MIBAR for this piece to be developed. So it was developed and integrated into our specific NetSuite instance. And it serves a lot of purposes. For one, when an order comes in, once we know what the artwork's supposed to be, the salesperson can review the order. Multiple people can review the order to make sure we have the right artwork. And it goes all the way down, because we take this piece of data and we write it into the work order, so that down the chain, I have multiple people looking at things multiple times to make sure that the item is the right one. Because if that file path does not match what that image is, when they go to make the product, they're going to then call order entry and say, hey, I have this image, but the file path doesn't correspond to this image. I can't make this product until you tell me which one it's supposed to be. Is the image wrong, or is the file path wrong?
Perfect.
And then this all the way down into pick, pack, and ship, because when the packing slip comes and they pull that, they can look at the image, look at a product before they get to the point of shipping it, and they can see, is this product exactly what it's supposed to be? Is this one I'm supposed to ship to this particular client?
Perfect. Now, notice on this screen also, just to point out to the people in attendance today, is the fact that this sales transaction, we talked about the fact that you make these custom work orders, and one of the nice features that NetSuite is doing for you is on each of the individual line items, it's actually creating and building a custom work order for you. This is native functionality that's capable there, and we'll show some of the downstream impact and some of the process improvements you made with the work order process itself. But over here to the right, I wanted to point out the fact that we've got this royalty code concept and university concept. And this is really, again, another piece of specific code for you that talks about the royalty and the compliance aspect, and dealing with agencies like the NFL, NHL, NCAA, all of the royalty agencies. We've got to make sure that we're accurate. And what this is doing is it's really aggregating this information. And this used to all be done offline in a spreadsheet, I recall. And this has got to be saving tons of time in terms of your daily workflow.
Massive amounts of time. And this was one of the pieces that, in fact, I would say this was the number one piece outside of the EDI and other aspects that we wanted done custom-wise, and we needed it integrated, because not only do we have to pay royalties, but a lot of times we have to pay in advance. So if, who's the school there? GC, Georgia College, State University, if they have a $500 advance, as an example, and I sell $100 worth of product, then I need the system to show that I had a $500 advance. I used $100 of that, and I still have a $400 advance left. I don't owe them any more money because I've already paid that advance. I needed something to monitor that, keep track of it until that balance went negative, which tells me, okay, now I've used my advance, I sold more product, I now need to start paying them based on my units sold and everything. So we have a code, we have dates when the license is available, we have who we're supposed to pay. There's just a whole wealth of data that got encompassed, not just in the sales order aspect, but also into the accounting system as well. It makes it very seamless. Yes. It works perfectly.
That's exactly what I was going to talk about, the fact that accounting integration and what NetSuite allows us to do. And this is a particular specific use case, but what our role in the relationship is to help build this stuff out. But what's unlike legacy systems of the past, the key thing is that all of this survives upgrade, that the nature of the technology permits us to create these customizations, but it does not lock you into the old version, because you're always going to be on the most current version of the software. And, while the process needs to be tested and you need to, just make sure your work is functional, the amount of effort that's associated to getting you to that next version is minimal. And in some instances, none at all, no impact at all. So that's really one of the wonderful aspects of working with a cloud solution. You can have your cake and eat it too. You can have your customization, but not version lock yourself, and then be able to take advantage of the significant offerings that NetSuite's going to develop into the software. And I want to talk a little bit about production planning, because we see how, if we go back to this slide, that we're creating these individual work orders. And I know that this was a big pinch point for you, because you were dealing with stuff on a FIFO basis, because you didn't really have a work order system. You were using a distribution system and picking tickets to manage work orders. But once we got it into a work order system where we said that this item type was an actual assembly, we knew we were going to do some production on this thing. You were able to create a work order, and now incorporating the imagery into here. And I hope to God that's not an Ohio State image. It is, but anyway, I won't hold it against you. You've got the file path, you've got all of this information here. So tell us, what did you do in terms of work order, and how has NetSuite in terms of workflow and process helped you in the decision of what to produce and knowing where the heck things are in the shop?
So, well, before I get into that, not only that, but if you see right next to the path, you can see there, it says backside file path. So this is actually an item that we're customizing. So it's not just an item we're selling to the Ohio State bookstore. This is somebody that's come in and said, hey, I want to order this particular unit, and I want my name on the back. And that's the name, and that's how I want it spelled. So, not only are we going to put the image on the front where they're going to rotate that mug, and we're going to mark their image on the back. That kind of came later. But when I first got there, we tackle one order at a time. And that meant if there was 5 line items on there and there were 5 different products, then there was machine setup time. So we do a product and then we'd have to reset the machine. Then we do the second product on that order and we reset the machine. I'm like, oh my gosh, we have to stop this. So now we release all the orders and then we categorize them based on products. So in this instance, it's an RSSD2. So we will set the machine once, we will roll through all these products. And when all those products are done, we'll set the machine for product 2 or whatever the next big batch of products is, and we will roll through those products. Once a product's done, we will scan that into what we call an internal bin. So the system knows where that product is, that particular line item is done, and where it's stored in the warehouse. And then once all 5 line items are done in this particular example on that order, a pick ticket gets generated. And that pick ticket says, this order is ready to be shipped. Here's where those items are. Here's what they look like. And here's where you can go find them. And it's very easy for our people to know on the internal bins, they go here, grab this one, grab this one. They can look, verify everything's exactly as it's supposed to be. And then boom, pick, pack, ship. I don't have major time of changing the machines. We got very, very efficient to the point where if we used to be able to do, I'm making numbers up, 100 orders a day on the old way, we were now double that and it easy. In fact, in the first iterations, we had people standing around. We had to go release more work orders because we just didn't plan on being that efficient.
Amazing. I mean, it's, and you talk about this kind of workflow and just building on top of these processes. I would imagine a lot of people in attendance today and have, similar kinds of scenarios, and the way you incorporated all these different facets for the artwork and the imagery, the email and the customer service, tying that together with production scanning and, using reports. And I know that you've become a fan of a technology called Saved Search within NetSuite that gives you the ability to run and aggregate. That takes a bit of a learning curve, but I think you've been able to be somewhat self-sufficient there and rely on us for higher level stuff to be done. But you've given us some great examples to think about, and certainly the output here depicts a lot of that. But we didn't want to leave finance and accounting out of the mix. As I started to talk about earlier, we did confront some issues there, and training was, on the GP platform was a bit of a challenge. They just didn't like the old concept of posting, and they didn't like the old methodologies, and they like more the fluidity of QuickBooks. And I think we've been able to achieve that with NetSuite. One of the things I love about NetSuite is that it's got the shoulders, it's got the strength to really run significant organizations, really built to scale, yet it's easy to use. I think it's safe to say the accounting team liked this a heck of a lot more than the legacy, forget the legacy system, they liked this a heck of a lot more than the GP system.
I think there was no doubt about that. There's always a learning curve when there's change. And as soon as they learned it, it was, heaps better. Absolutely.
And just to give people in attendance just some visualization here, looking at the type of sophisticated information that can be brought to the forefront of a user's profile. Obviously, it's all security driven so that the right people are getting the right information at the right time, but having an interface that is keeping with what people would expect a modern software application to look like, but yet having the sophistication to be able to do real-time financial reporting without using third-party report writers, without having to go offline to Excel, which a lot of organizations still do. Even if they go to certain cloud applications, NetSuite has really helped us. And one of the things I'll just quickly jump into real quick, hopefully my screen is still presenting here, is just bringing up a visualization with a little bit more interactivity and seeing how you can go from one of these dashboards, one of these user dashboards, down into financials with drill throughs here, and approval workflows and managing swaths of orders using these visual cues to be able to manage systems so that as we look over to a detail of a customer record, having this kind of drill through access as we drill through to inventory items, how you can incorporate the images, whether it's stored externally, as Brian is talking about, or stored internally within the file cabinet that's available to you within NetSuite. You do have all of these capabilities and a very full-featured solution stack. What they focus on is a tool called Suite Success, a methodology, I should say, called Suite Success, which could be built for wholesale and distribution or light manufacturing environments or things, organizations like that. And what that means is that out of the box, you're going to have a lot of functionality geared around industry requirements that are there for the use, right? You don't have to develop or re-engineer processes that you're instantaneously become better because you have availability to these types of platforms. And here it's just pulled up an example of being able to go through an approval process and using filtered views and the use of simple checkboxes to control. And the depth comes in. We have different levels of supervisory approval. So some attendees today will have organizations that are a bit larger with different thresholds of approval processes. Multi-stage approval processes are all part of this core NetSuite offering. The key thing, it becomes one of tailoring it around your requirements and obviously making it work for you, as Brian is pointing out. And then, of course, the key thing for today, I really want to focus some time here, is on managing the growth and building business value. As if, certainly customer service and creating efficiencies builds tremendous business value, but integration of both EDI and e-commerce. Talk to us a bit about A, how has that transformed your business, and B, what it was like to go through that process with the various partners. I'm going to pull two of them up on the screen and allow you to talk a little bit about the process, what it's meant to your business, and how did you accomplish this?
I'll start with the order entry process. When you're having, hundreds of orders come in a day, manually entering those orders, there's just no way you can be efficient. And I don't like preventable mistakes. And what I mean by that is somebody was supposed to key in on the order 10 items and we key in 100. And so now I've got 90 products I didn't need to make. Those are on me. That was a mistake that we made. To me, that's a preventable mistake. So anytime I can automate a process and have that, I don't mind if the customer meant to order 10 and they send me 100 via EDI. I love those kinds of mistakes. But on the other side of it is, what can I prevent from an order entry side? And all of a sudden, we could, in the click of a button through EDI, and we have over 10 partners that we receive orders with via EDI, all of that stuff just comes in. We send out the ASNs. We send out invoicing. All of it's done electronically. So now all of this paper, all of these mail expenses, all of this work, we were able to reduce our workforce down to a level that made sense for us from a business perspective, but also we just got more efficient. And there were less mistakes, there were less chances for mistakes. The integration aspect was pretty simple. There's a number of choices. We went through Commerce. They have a lot of hooks already built into NetSuite, but based off of our business model with royalty, artwork, and a lot of customization that we do with product, we had to go through and we created a ton of custom fields and things. We had to work with them to no, I need this data written here and here. And when you pull this data, for the ASN, for the shipping, don't pull it from this field. So it was a simple process. It takes a couple of weeks with their people to kind of work through it. But as soon as you get through all of the hard parts, then it's just flawless. And it was the same thing with FAR App. As we brought on Amazon, We use them as an integration sitting between Amazon and NetSuite, and it's just seamless. All the orders as they come in, we have it polling. Amazon pulls down the relevant data. We've already programmed it where it needs to be written in NetSuite, and it gets written. Same thing when we ship a product, all the relevant data that Amazon requires, FarApp pulls that data out and it writes it back into Amazon for us. And then I guess thirdly, we wrote our own API so that customers who don't or can't or don't have the ability based on the software or the package or whatever they're running to integrate with EDI or anything else, we wrote an API that allows them to move files, enter orders via this API through FarApp that actually just writes it into NetSuite, and then we write the respective data back to them.
I think that's a really important last piece that you mentioned, and really a couple of significant things said there. Yeah, we had custom fields, custom locations, image paths, and image movement, and other things that needed to be set, and being able to create that in NetSuite, and then being able to have these partners integrate with that. That's got to be a common concern for everybody in attendance, and I know many of the organizations I work with think about that. And then again, survives upgrade, and I think that speaks to the ecosystem of products and providers that are out there, whether it's True Commerce or SPS Commerce and various others, FarApp and other integration partners that are there, working in an ecosystem that gives you the ability to select from various partners. That always puts you in a great position. I know we have a Brian's top 5 cautionary notes, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. But you also said something about the API, the custom development. NetSuite has an open API structure. So that's something that we can work with you. And you also have an import template scenario for CSV uploads. But really by any means necessary, you're getting order flow into your system. And I guess that's really what it's all about, right? How do we increase order flow and make it easy to do business with us?
Well, exactly. And we've actually used that CSV import. And the part I liked about it is it's customizable, because you can't always control the data you get from a customer and how it's going to be. So once we got the import set for that specific customer, then we just saved it. Now, when we get orders from that particular customer, it's an easy import, and it knows their Excel file comes over a certain way, and it's just seamless at that point.
That's great. And that's having end users being able to really master that technology creates the autonomy everybody's looking for, right? Nobody really wants to be completely codependent upon their reseller organization. There's greater relationship we've been able to establish and working for you and the Fanatic Group. It's about creating an environment of autonomy and affecting a knowledge transfer, and hearing that you're able to do those things and knowing that you're able to do those things is certainly part of our vision in helping to bring people to this technology. We did spend some time, I won't retrace on the royalty reporting. I think we covered that pretty well. But where I really wanted to focus is, what does the unified platform of NetSuite really bring to the table? So they have the Suite Cloud platform that is built on several different components, right? So number one, it is built for the cloud from the ground up. It is multi-tenant by nature, and it runs on the entire Oracle stack. And it's built to run an entire business end to end, whether it's HR, inventory, production, manufacturing. They have a full scope of modules that are available. And most important to this bullet point is that everyone is on the same release, right? So twice a year, the software upgrades, you've been through probably 5 years on it, at least 10 upgrades that we've gone through the process. Again, a seamless process, all the customizations coming over, and that's just huge in terms of business value that's created. Spoke a little bit about the modules, but know that built into here is also CRM. There's also a native e-commerce component. Fanatic Group happens to be using Amazon, but it does support its own internal e-commerce application, or can connect to others like Shopify through tools like FarApp and various other third-party providers. It does support multi-language, multi-currency environments, multi-company environments, intercompany transaction management. So if anybody in attendance today has an organization that is certainly looking to do this kind of thing, and they have a multi-subsidiary environment, absolutely, this is the One World platform will help you to achieve that. And then, of course, there are industry-specific functions. I spoke about that earlier in what they call the Suite Success methodology. Suite Success for wholesale and distribution and manufacturing. I know Brian's business kind of skates in both worlds, so you can certainly add and expand the modules outside of that core suite. And then bringing this all together, taking advantage of advanced cloud capabilities like the analytics that you saw in some of the dashboards, and advanced artificial intelligence and machine learning is being incorporated as these cloud providers are becoming more and more sophisticated and expanding the scope of the solution. What's wonderful for your relatively low cost subscription, you're able to take advantage of those things and continue to advance. And then when you put in the industry layer, everything again migrates over. So we're drawing to the end, and we're at that time in a broadcast where we're going to go through Brian's key tips. And one of the first things he mentions is select a cloud provider and save yourself some headaches. So suffice it to say, you're a fan of the cloud. Not a big
fan of the cloud. No, it's if you've been through enough upgrades every 2 to 4 years with servers, software, backup systems, everything else, there's no place like the cloud. It's just the only place to be.
Absolutely, we couldn't agree more. We still have some legacy clients that we're actively supporting, but if they haven't transitioned, I think everybody's thinking about it and moving. And it's clearly, you were so kind enough today to point out a lot of value points and why it makes sense to do it. What do you mean by this next one? Make sure there's a partner that knows what you don't.
Well, whenever you go to a software package, even if you've used it for a while, we've had NetSuite for 5 years, but you still don't know what you don't know. And so even in the legacy side of things, we always had a good partner that when there was something that was outside of our capabilities, we weren't sure if it was possible or could the software do this. It's key to have a partner that can solve or help you solve those issues, like royalty and some other things that we needed to have done. And those were key factors. If the solution doesn't provide you the capability, because nothing out of the box is going to fit your business perfectly.
Right.
So if you don't have a partner that can help you customize it to make it work for you, then it's going to be a struggle, and there's going to be some frustration and a bigger learning curve than there needs to be.
Absolutely. And I think, the testament to you being here today is the relationship we look to build and making sure that we're really in this together. We can't do it without good partner, and it's hard for business owners to do it without a good partner on the other side. So, we believe in that philosophy. And as I said earlier, it's about one of empowerment and really working together, pulling the sled in the same direction. Make sure there's an open API structure so you can add partners. I think we talked about that a little bit, but that's key. Not every cloud solution is as well documented as NetSuite. Not every cloud solution has the scope and ecosystem that a NetSuite brings to the table. How has that helped you in terms of choice and options?
It's been critical. The fact that so many people support it. So when I go, I know that everybody's going to be able to, oh yeah, we've got an API for that. We've got a module that fits that. Perfect. Because the last thing you want to have is where you get into a situation where you're jumping through hoops to try and solve an issue when it's like, well, why can't I just drop a module? Why isn't there an API? I could solve this in 2 seconds. So I think having that open architecture, at least to a degree, in a closed system is a key thing.
Absolutely. And then you go on to say, make sure there's always 2 ways to do something, and people know how to do it both ways. What do you mean by that?
Well, for example, if we bring somebody on and they're they're seeing all these orders pop in through EDI, and they're busy going out through their day. And then all of a sudden we receive, maybe our EDI provider goes down for a little bit, and all of a sudden orders are coming in via fax or whatever, and they never entered an order manually. They don't know how to do something like that. So we want our people to understand how to do things in multiple different ways, because I don't want anybody to rely on, oh, this is just the way things happen, because there's always a different way. And I need people to be able to respond and fix things and think outside the box if something doesn't happen how they're used to it. So we like to train people in both ways or multiple ways to achieve the same thing.
And that really comes full circle to one of our opening commentaries about, transitioning from a task worker to a knowledge worker, and being able to use these tools to be a little creative, and use the term think outside the box. So kind of having fallback position is key. And this last one, I think it kind of ties into the scope of the NetSuite ecosystem. There is always make sure there's at least a second ISV solution option at the ready. And we talk about you use Far App and True Commerce, but you're not married to these guys, and you can think about transitioning at any time. So how has that manifested itself, or what makes you mention this particular last point?
Well, I mean, just a number of scenarios that if you've been in this business long enough, you run across where you've got a vendor, you love them, they do everything you want, and then you get the dreaded email like, oh, hey, we're shutting our doors, we've been sold, the company doesn't want to do what we do, or they're going to do it differently, and all of a sudden you're left with no partner, and all of a sudden you're back to a manual process. So I always like to make sure there's multiple options based on the specific needs of what our business is going to be, so that if one I see is going to work better down the road, then I can make a change if it necessitates it, or if a vendor drops off, or if a vendor is just not meeting the needs of our requirements anymore, or they won't make an upgrade, or they won't help us achieve something and another company will. Well, if I've got options, perfect. If I don't have options, now I'm dragged into a mess that is going to make me inefficient and not have the business operate as efficiently as I could. Understood. Well, man, you've given us a tremendous amount of insight today. Really appreciate you taking time out of your busy day. I know you're a busy man with a lot going on, and I speaking for everybody in attendance, I think you've given us some great things to think about and really creative ideas of how to use the solution. If you've got like just 2 minutes, we've got a couple of quick questions. Jared had posted a question. What was the learning curve like for your users in terms of their adoption into NetSuite? You describe a little bit of that, and did they take to it quickly, or what were some of the challenges there? The learning curve was rather quick. Everybody's used to working within a browser. That we did have some people that preferred one browser over another, and sometimes there are limitations on browsers. They won't allow certain things to happen. Everybody kind of coalesced around the Chrome or Chromium-based browser. That seems to be what I'd say 90% of our people utilize. But mostly the initial aspect was just finding where fields were. Where's this information? And then after a week, everybody knew where we needed to go to get certain pieces of data, whether it was customer service related, artwork related, whatever it may be. It was less than a week, I would say, for them to get acclimated onto it.
And I know you had us, we went through together, part of our methodology is to go through a significant UAT process where you would kind of walk through with you the use cases of sales to cash and procure to pay, and make sure that, we're kind of buttoned down on a plan, which, makes everybody, much more efficient in terms of their adoption. And then one other question that was raised was about the data that
Jory, let me add one aspect to that, because we did accounting people in, and we did bring salespeople in, and we said, hey, here's your screens. What other pieces of data do you require? Would you like to see? And through you guys, we were able to move stuff or show different stuff, or even though they had to click different places to get it, can I just extrapolate that data and show it on a single screen so they'd have to go search for it.
Mm.
So a lot of it, from a learning curve aspect, we tried to mitigate that as much as possible by having our people involved in the process of what the software was going to ultimately look like for them to make it easier.
That is, that is just great. And, the worst thing in the world, and we implement systems, is when you have kind of disconnected teams in the office, and the first time they're looking at the software is when they start to get trained, which you want to do close to the official go live. And then all of a sudden you get the giant whoops factor. So you want to make sure you get those people involved early. And I think of many of the things said, that was really, really just a key piece of advice. So again, Brian, I don't want to overstay your courtesy, and we really greatly appreciate you taking the time to join us today, and certainly look forward to us working together for many, many years to come. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for attending. You see, you can reach me at my email, jory@mibar.net, or call me direct with any questions. Our team will, as Maria had indicated, will get you a copy of the presentation in email within the next 48 hours. Onward and upward. Look forward to servicing you, and let us know if we could be of any assistance. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Brian. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye now.